Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, no pictures live stream. In this presentation, I'd like to talk about some adverts I saw on international, as in websites in international locations, claiming or asserting that Australia has a critical, if not a huge, critical shortage of construction workers. Come to Australia, flood in, because it's all these jobs, and there's just so shortage of work. Now, these adverts seem to be particularly in third world countries, so this can't be a genuine thing of wanting skilled workers. They want maybe coolies that they can exploit, perhaps. I don't know how genuine it is. I'm not even sure, and I haven't spent the time to go into the money trail. Who's paying for these adverts? Is it sham labour hire brokers in places like India and China? Is it something else? Is it NGOs paying for it as part of a wider scam to bring black and brown peasants into the West? Is it an Australian government initiative, or are they farming it out to some subcontractor and paying them? I don't know the answers to those things, but the adverts I have seen. So let's have a look. Is there a shortage of construction workers? Now, there's been talk, and the government likes to talk this up. The economy just can't grow. The economy is stuck. The economy's got nowhere to go. The only solution is importing masses of illiterate third world peasants who've never had a job, are illiterate in their own language, can't speak a word of English. Those are the skills needed to grow the economy. And the insanity of that proposition is pretty obvious first off. But let's have a look at it. So on this basis, I sort of went around and said, well, is there a shortage of construction workers? Now, there's supposed to be a shortage at all levels, managerial, middle management, technical, engineering, foremen on site, the project managers. And this is, of course, completely untrue. Now, if I look at if I go onto the biggest online internet job board listing, and look at the amount of jobs nationally that exist in these categories, you'd struggle to find even 1,000 jobs, and they're less than a week old in terms of they've just been posted. So if I look at the amount of jobs that are there over, say, 30 days or longer, then there's almost none. So whatever jobs are coming on are being filled pretty quickly. So this idea, this is more, in the above the average wage level, that calculus that I undertook there. So then going around to, talking to people I know, people who know people type thing, just making a few phone calls. And so here's an outfit, for example, a reasonably specialized area of engineering. So you wouldn't expect to get a lot of people coming in on this. But they got over 40 applications, all of whom, or nearly all of whom, were met the criteria. They could have hired any one of them. So now for that narrow area of expertise, 40 applications is huge. I mean, you're lucky if you get half a dozen applications for a gig like that. And so 40 is just stratospheric in terms of numbers. And pretty much the same sort of thing. Now, in other roles, now there can be situations where it's, say, an engineering gig or a project management gig out in the middle of nowhere, and they don't really want to pay any extra for it. They want to pay the sort of wages that you would pay, or the salaries that you would pay if it was a nice, comfortable, air-conditioned office in the city. So, that's not much incentive there. And they want a lot of experience. Now, the young guys who are not long out of the engineering university course, they're prepared to do that sort of thing. They're adventurous. They're prepared to go out in the middle of nowhere and spend a year doing that. But other people with families and, established relationships, they're not going to do that. And if you're going to get them to do it, you have to make it worth their while. That's just the reality of what you're asking for. But these engineering firms are trying to do it on the cheap. but they don't want the inexperienced young guy. We want the top flight experienced guy to go out and do this sort of work, but we don't really want to pay much extra, if any at all. So this is an example of what they cite as a shortage of skills. There's no skill shortage here, nothing at all, nothing even resembling. There are plenty of skills, but they have to put the benefits on the table. And the benefits of the table would be that the guy wants to flight back to the city to see his family every weekend. You'd be prepared to go out there, but then you've got even more bucks. He's got to have more money for going out there and suffering that sort of privation. The company doesn't really want to pay it. So they certainly don't want to pay his plane fare back every weekend. And so they cite this as a skill shortage. There's no skill shortage. So they're thinking, well, if we get a guy from another country, say a medium income country, maybe even a third world country, or just some guy who's desperate, they're being prepared. They'll be much more prepared to accept a lower pay and accept much more difficult working conditions, because they might get citizenship or permanent residency, or will sponsor them to come. That sort of. So they do that type of calculus. And in order to present that as a justifiable way of behaving, which it isn't, then they have to argue that it's a skill shortage. Skills. We can't get the skills. I bet that's an absolute lie. If you offer a job to somebody who pays $1 for every million years they work, and nobody applies, you can't then say that's a skill shortage. It's not. You're just making no effort to hire somebody. So now looking at other supposed jobs in this area, the demands are quite high. They seem to jettison these demands when they appoint brown and affirmative action candidates. But this idea again, there's any sort of a skill shortage, isn't it? The companies are holding out for especially when it's a white guy to be hired. They're holding out for the top tier type of supposed skills. Some of these people may be professional bureaucrats in reality, but at least they've got the sort of the pedigree of the brand name firm that they work for. Nonetheless, and I've had to deal with some of these guys, and I can tell you they are bureaucrats. Nonetheless, the companies are not prepared to, these hiring companies are not prepared to deviate from the script, the hiring script and that sort of stuff, for even a moment, but they're very quick to claim skill shortages, and the government puts them under no pressure at all. So, no, there's no skill shortage. You just have to modify your requirement, dickheads. Pay better, or help somebody move up through the value chain by giving someone a go, giving someone a chance, that type of thing. So they're under no pressure to do that. So and remember, they're being leaned on by the BlackRocks and the State Streets and so on to hire a lot of affirmative action people, which then puts a sort of if you like, a downstream pressure on having to make sure that the white people have to carry the load, and there's more white people to really act as be a support staff for the affirmative action hires. But I couldn't find a single example of genuine skill shortage or anything like that. Then it comes down to the actual workers. This is the flunkies digging the holes, on the building site, or digging up the holes in the road, that sort of thing. Not the engineers or the project managers or the supervisors or the any of those sort of office people. No, it's none of them. It's just directly the workers on the ground. Now, there's been a drastic change. There's a lot of small subcontracting level type companies around. When I say small, they turn over a few $1 million a year type thing, and they don't have viable businesses. They can only exist by hiring and using peasant third world labour through sham labour hire firms. So these illiterate coolie workers from the third world, they're much cheaper in the overall scheme of things to employ than local people, and especially if you get them through these scam labour hire firms, and there are these scam labour hire firms everywhere, delivering, whether it be construction workers to dig holes, cleaners, or wait staff in your restaurant or cafe. It's a massive industry, and the government seems determined to look the other way and pretend it's not happening. Now, and they use this as a skill shortage type smokescreen. But what happens is these coolies, third world peasant coolies, are employed to dig holes and that sort of stuff on a building site. And if it starts to rain, you've got to pay your local people. It's not their fault if it rains, so you have to pay them really to stay on standby. What if it stops raining in a few hours? That type of thing. So you got to pay them. But with these coolies through the labour hire firms, you don't. The minute it starts to rain, right, that's it, off you go, and you stop paying them for the minute they walk off the site. Now, if you're a small business, a smallish business that is struggling to maintain any sort of viability, then, or it's to the enrichment of one person only, then you don't exist as a commercially viable business. The only way you can survive or exist is using these third world peasants in the labour hire scams. And now that saves you in the end quite a lot of money. And it also reduces your liability per hour and costs per hour, these sort of things. But it's the only thing that keeps those non-viable businesses in business. In reality, none of them could exist, or very few of them could exist. That they just can't play in that league. They don't have whether it's the business expertise, the resources, the critical mass, or whatever you want to call it. But if they can avoid meeting their obligations in pay and salary and conditions, then they will. Now, at the same time, I've mentioned this before about factories and wanting workers. They pay the absolute bare bones minimum wage, the bare bones of the bare bones, and they wonder why they can't get workers. So they'll advertise for workers. Now, people who are going to apply for those bare bones wages, they'll already be on some sort of government benefit. Now, if they take the job, they lose the government benefit straight away. And if they then lose the job, for whatever the reason, then it'll take them 6 to 8 weeks to get back onto the government benefit. So it's a high risk move at that level. It's a high risk move to take a job when you can be laid off at any time, for any reason. So and there's at that end, there's a lot of companies that hire those labourer type workers because they've got a spurt of extra work coming in. They just need people for a few weeks. But instead of advertising that as we've got 3 weeks of work, because then no one would take it because they'll lose their government benefit. Instead of advertising they'll advertise it as a full-time job. And then at the end of 3 weeks, they get rid of the person. And that's well known sort of around, if you like, on the street, if you will. That's a well-known thing. So people are very, very cautious and very reluctant to take these jobs because they may only last a week or two and they can get thrown overboard for any reason or no reason at all. And again, they lose their government benefit for weeks. So it's very hard to get people to take those lowest of the low wage type jobs, particularly so if the factory or the whatever it is, the work site is nowhere near public transport, because then someone's got to have a car, or it's an absolute shit fight to get to it on public transport. So it's just too expensive. They can spend more money getting to and from work than the fucking job pays. So they don't do that. But this is not a skill shortage. This is touted as a skill shortage. Now, when you've got labour hire firms that are packing 25 Indian guys or African, it doesn't matter, Bangladeshis, Pakistanis, 25 people into a 2-bedroom apartment, then you can afford to, the minibus arrives and out jumps half a dozen people, and that's your work crew for the factory or something. Then they can afford to do that, and the factory, the company that owns the factory, the owner can employ these people on low risk, so he can get rid of them anytime he wants, and it's no big deal. But if he employs local people, he runs the risk that he may get chased down by the Department of Labour and Industry, or the Working Rights Commission, and these sorts of things. So there's a risk there as well. But so how to get around the problem? Well, you can improve the wages, but I've spoken to factory owners And so, well, just why don't you increase the wages or offer more benefits or offer free breakfast and lunch and dinner? Or, why not make an effort to make the job attractive? Do what you have to do to make people apply or to get people to apply for the job. I mean, not only do you get applicants, but then you get better quality applicants because they can see, oh yeah, this could work out. Why not do that? No, why do I have to do that? Why do I have to do that? No, I don't want to do that. So the solution as the factory owner and these other outfits, the worksite people see, the solution is just mass migration. Just bring in peasants from the third world who expect less and want less, demand less, will work for less. And that's his solution. And it's no solution, nor is it adding to skills. It's a lowering standards all across the board, bypassing employment regulations and that sort of thing. So when I saw the ad, I went out to look. I can't find any evidence of it. I can find evidence of people just wanting third world peasants, but they're not skilled labor. So the reality is the whole thing is a massive scam. There's no shortage of labor. I mean, if you look at whether it be Britain or Australia or elsewhere, there are millions of people who are underemployed, millions of people who are on these fake disability type pensions and so on. Also, there's many retired people. I'm only a few years away from reaching mandatory retirement age, and there are numerous people who are in good condition. People I know, for goodness sakes, who are in good condition. They're in 65 or over 65, and some of them into their mid 70s that are still in excellent physical condition, mentally and physically in good shape. They could easily take on some serious work. But so given all the capability and skills that are around in all Western economies, in Britain there are supposed to be 20 million people either unemployed or underemployed, and yet they bring people in because there's supposed to be a worker shortage. There's no fucking worker shortage, nor is there in Australia. So we've got to assume this is a globalist-driven piece of narrative bullshit propaganda in order to underwrite and justify mass movement of illiterate third world peasants into the West. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback Channel. Thank you for listening.